Now, the government's already introduced a bill from yesterday's Queen's speech, and it is one that it says will strengthen the legal duties on higher education providers in England to protect freedom of speech. Critics say now the evidence is shaky and that the proposed law won't actually address the issue the government is concerned about on university campuses. I managed to speak to the university's minister, Michelle Donnellan, and asked what it's intended to achieve.
Our bill honours our manifesto commitment, and it's designed to strengthen free speech in higher education. Really, it's about bolstering the existing legal duties that are there, but ensuring that robust action is taken when these are breached. And it will enable us to really tackle that threat of censorship, high-profile examples, but it goes much deeper than that as well. And it's not just about protecting free speech, it's really about a cultural change where we ensure that we promote it.
I'm interested in how this is going to work. I mean, if I'm invited by a university group to go and speak and then I say something racist and they cancel the invitation, am I going to go to the Office for Students and say, I want £1,000 of compensation, or I'd like the £32 train fare reimbursed, or it was an annoying, disruption to my diary to be invited and cancelled?
Yeah, so any speaker on university campus or academic or student could take their case to the new person that will sit on the OFS board, who will investigate it and decide, obviously depend on exactly what you said, whether it went into the prevent duty, whether it went into hate crimes. But if it was just basically something that was intolerant and offensive but wasn't unlawful, then you would certainly have a case.
You do mention cases that have hit the public eye. One of the cases was that of Germaine Greer, invited to Cardiff University. Many protests against her on grounds of her views on trans people. There were protests there. The case has been often cited. It was cited in a report from Policy Exchange, which Gavin Williamson, your boss, has also quoted. But in fact, in that particular case, she did go to Cardiff University. There were protests against her. She did go to Cardiff University. Isn't that a case where the system is working?
Well, that's just one example. That was back in 2015, and she had to have extensive security to be able to fulfill that. But that is just one example. You can look at the likes of Selena Todd. You can look at the likes of...
You've been quoting, or your side, if you like, has quoted that example and has mistakenly implied that she was no platform. But she actually did get the platform.
She did indeed. I don't believe that we have ever quoted that she was no platform. We've quoted that she nearly was, to the point she had to hire extensive security. But that is only one example.
Let me just take one last example. Actually, this one came up when I was at university. Historian David Irving, widely regarded as Holocaust denier. Would he be someone, if a student group invited him to come and give a talk and other students protested or tried to block his way, is he one that would merit the defence of your bill?
What this bill is designed to do is ensure that we protect and we promote free speech that is lawful. So any free speech that is lawful,
isn't it? Holocaust denial in this country is lawful, isn't it?
So what I'm saying, yes, so that's...
Right. So Holocaust denial is okay. You would defend a Holocaust denier being invited to campus because that is part of the free speech argument.
Obviously, it would depend on exactly what they were saying, whether they were straying into racism, whether they were straying into hate crimes. But a lot of these things that we would be standing up for would be hugely offensive, would be hugely hurtful. And you and I...
Including Holocaust denial. You've admitted it. Holocaust denial is not illegal. It's just wrong and offensive. It's not illegal. And you would defend the free speech right. If a student body chose to invite David Irving, he would have the right to come and would have recourse to compensation in the event that others managed to block his presence.
Well, I think you're conflating two things. There is a difference between condoning and supporting something.
Absolutely.
As opposed to standing up for free speech.
The reason why I've gone through a number of examples is that don't they bring home the case that the law is not the place really to litigate this? When did the Conservatives become the party that see a problem and then immediately jump to a legislative outcome to try and outlaw it? I mean, isn't the way to sort this out to tell universities, do remember, free speech, terribly important, go away, make it work?
We've been doing that for years, I'm afraid. In fact, my predecessors had been doing that for years. The Secretary of State had warned universities publicly in the media that we would legislate if further action wasn't taken. It wasn't, so we have now resorted and made good on our manifesto commitment.
You say it's not been working. What is the evidence for that?
If we look at the Policy Exchange report, where...
that mistakenly said Germaine Greer had been no platformed when she was given a platform.
But if you look at the policy exchange statistics that were shown, it showed that 32% of those that identified as fairly right or right-wing had refrained from airing their views or researching certain topics. The same for 15% for those on the centre or centre-left. 4 out of 10 students felt unable to come forward and speak up if they'd supported leaving the European Union. So there have been a number of reports that have shown this, but also high-profile examples.
But let's be clear, Michelle Donnellan, let's just think carefully about this. OK, so a lot of Brexity students might have felt, embarrassed to voice their views loudly. I really don't see how going to pass this law that gives David Irving the right to go and claim his train fare back if he's no platform. How does this change the problem you've just identified?
What it does is it not only protects free speech, but promotes it and changes the culture within our institutions.
No, it doesn't. It puts into law.
You can't be finished on the answer.
How does it do that? That's what I'm asking.
But I'm trying to answer. At the moment, we have a situation where there is a growing sense of censorship within our institutions, and students have told me that, academics have told me that. We've seen a number of examples, like Professor Friedman, who was given rape threats and urination against her door was done.
But you're conflating lots of interesting and important examples, all of which deserve investigation. But to be absolutely honest, I don't see how your law is going to change that culture. It's already against the law to urinate on someone's door, I think.
So what it does do, as I said, is make sure that universities promote free speech, don't just protect it. So there is a cultural change within there. We're also sharing best practice. These individuals can then take their case through the courts if need be, which there isn't the ability to do so at the moment.
Courts are awfully busy, Michelle. We don't need another huge queue of people arguing over their train fares in court, do we? Over I was invited and then de-invited,
Well, you might trivialise this.
I'm not trivialising. I'm just it's whether the law is the solution. It's whether the law is the solution to the problem you've identified.
So over the last few years, we have tried to solve this problem by encouraging the sector to take further action, and we haven't seen the change that is needed to address this problem.
In all honesty, hand on heart, is this really the biggest problem at the moment in your department?
Of course, the skills bill includes the lifelong loan entitlement, which is applicable to higher education and ensuring that higher education is accessible at all stages and ages of life. But I do think that free speech is an important topic. It was in our manifesto commitment, one that we were elected to enact and make good on, which is what we're now doing. And if the pandemic has taught us anything, I would argue it's taught us how much we value our freedoms, as much as we may trivialise this topic. In fact, it is fundamental to our democracy. And that said, at the heart of my work and my key priority, of course, is student welfare, and they have experienced an extremely challenging last year, which is why I'm working hard with universities to try and add back to that student experience, and as well as the face-to-face teaching, which can start to continue for the remaining students from the 17th of May. This is certainly not the only work that I am doing.
Michelle Donnellan, the Universities Minister.